Hey, it's Brock here from Rock Hill Farms, and today I want to talk about tools, and specifically buying tools without wasting a bunch of money. And that can come in a couple different forms. Sometimes we buy cheap tools that are such poor quality they won't even do the job they're intended for. And sometimes we buy tools that we're never going to use, and sometimes we buy expensive name brand tools that aren't any better than the cheaper versions. And I think that varies based on the type of tool. And so today I want to go through and start with simple things like screwdrivers and go all through hand tools and then power tools and maybe even talk a little bit about equipment that has its own motor. Before I get too far into it, I want to tell my story as a hoarder of tools. I'm obsessive about tools, just love any kind of tools. It feels like the more tools I have, the more capable I am as a man, which really, what makes you more capable is the experience and the skills that you build. But when I was 18 years old, I had no experience working on anything. My dad had a hard time getting me to help with anything, and I took a job in a factory that required me to work on equipment every single day. And I very quickly took a liking to it. I was really good at that job, and I stayed there for 13 years as a mechanic. And this is the toolbox I had in that job. And I was obsessed with collecting tools and having exactly the right tools for everything. If you didn't have a tool for a job, you fabricated it, you went to the maintenance department and had them build you a special puller for whatever the task was. And I kept my toolbox perfectly organized where every inch of every drawer had something that was applicable to the job. When I left that job, I brought the toolbox home and I had nowhere to put it. It actually sat outside in an open-air carport at one point. And my tools got scattered and lost everywhere. So now, I finally have a nice shop to keep my stuff in. I've spent the last week going through and organizing all of this. And I'm looking at it from a perspective of what tools would I like to have that I'm missing? What tools do I have that are lower quality and don't work very well? What should I replace? But honestly, for the prospect of this video, what I'm thinking is, if I was 18 again, and I owned no tools and no toolbox, what would I buy? What would I start with to get the most bang for my buck? So, we're going to start there and go through it, and we're going to start with screwdrivers. One last thing before I start opening drawers is that I don't consider myself to be any kind of authority. This is not let Brock teach you something. What I want is a conversation. I want to get your feedback. Tell me what I say that you agree with or disagree with, or maybe things I didn't even think of. So I went around to a bunch of stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, Harbor Freight, Walmart, and looked at their tool section, and I took pictures of things that stuck out to me. And one of them was a $40 set of screwdrivers. It's like, this will give you every screwdriver you ever need. And there's like 20 screwdrivers in there. And I'm like, do you really need that many screwdrivers? And there's not a single screwdriver in there that is a quality tool that I would want to carry with me. It's just having a lot of junk, basically. So, what do I think you actually need? If you're just turning a regular screw, you need a 6-in-1 screwdriver. They make all kinds of variations, 8-in-1, or ones that have extra bits in the back. All of that's good. But you really need a screwdriver that replaces 4 basic screwdrivers by having reversible small Phillips and large Phillips. I know they're called number 1 and number 2 and all of that, but you get the idea that you've got the larger and the smaller Phillips. You can use this as a nut driver. This replaces half of the screwdrivers that are in that set for $40, and those screwdrivers are not a high quality tool in my opinion. So then you say, that's great for a short screwdriver. What if I need a long screwdriver? Well, I've got 2 tools in here that solve that problem. We stick this extension in here, put whatever bit you want in the end. Now you have a long screwdriver for turning screws, and it actually lets you hold this where it doesn't rotate, turns that, and it's flexible. So right here, we've replaced about 10 screwdrivers out of that set by having this. And then if you don't want it to be flexible, I've got a straight shaft. If we're way down in there, we got us a big old long screwdriver. But I find most of the time when I want a screwdriver, I'm not looking to turn a screw that's way down in a hole. I'm using it as a tool for leverage. Now, in general, that's what pry bars are for, right? But let's look at big screwdrivers. The big screwdrivers in that screwdriver set, to me, aren't useful for anything. You can't use it as a pry tool, whereas this, you can use this as a pry tool. You can drive it into something. The best type of screwdrivers, if you're getting a bigger screwdriver, have two features. Number one, they have a square shank that you can put a wrench or a crescent wrench on to apply more leverage if you actually have a large diameter screw and you need to put down pressure on it and then force it to turn. And really the best screwdrivers that go one step beyond this, your steel goes all the way through to the back. So if you need to use it and drive on the back, you've got the option to do that. So inside my drawer, I've got this. This serves no purpose, really. Neither does this one. Why do I need that when I can carry one screwdriver? Why would I carry multiple? Then we've got this screwdriver here, which is the one I carried with me at my manufacturing job. And it takes the same shaft as that other screwdriver, but this one, you can pop the shaft out, put it in the handle this way, and you got a T-handle for more torque. A couple of these little L-shaped or S-shaped, whatever these tight reach screwdrivers are, they can be handy too. So now let's move up a drawer and talk about things that can go into that same bit on a screwdriver or a T-handle, but also can go in your driver. So we've got these dedicated bits with the long reach. These are square head. Sometimes I keep those or Torx. But in this drawer, I've got all the standard accessories. Here's your full set of Torx and your hex key replacements. I do not love these tools. I'm going to show you what I prefer, but they come in sets, so I have them. You got a bunch of different screwdriver bits. Rather than buying those sets, I would skip most of that and get these packs that have 25 or 50 or 100 number 2 Phillips. And in this, I've got two different sizes mixed. That's a good value to me. And these are hardened, and they're going to hold up better than a regular screwdriver. I've also got a lot of these bit holders that are magnetic, and I keep like a Torx in one and a square head in another. I've got a bunch of these already, so I'm not constantly switching the bits out. Then I've got standard and metric nut drivers. Just basic stuff, nothing special. Here's an interesting one, and this is not a really common thing, but this is an example of wasting money at its finest. So these are stud extractors. I have no idea what I paid for them. I've had them a long time and used them a few times. They work pretty good. If you got the right size stud, you hammer this on, turn it out with a wrench or a socket. And I bought these way back when I was in factory work. It's a high quality product, really handy to have. These are not. This is the epitome of something you should not buy. So at that time, I was constantly removing broken bolts. I'd say over half of them, even if they were down in the hole, we made our own punches out of a hardened material that worked better than any punch I've found since. It was knife stock. And we used those, and we could usually tap the bolt out. But when you couldn't, we were drilling and using easy outs. And I've broken a lot of easy outs, especially the first year on that job. I learned how to handle an easy out without breaking it. But this set of drill bits and easy outs was $13. Might as well throw it in the trash. As I looked at this, I bought it, and I brought it home, and I remembered the times when I bought my own as opposed to using the ones that the company had available to us, and the quality was just not there. This is not a tool you can buy a cheap version of. I might try this big one. With the big one, it'll either get the bolt out or it won't, but you're probably not going to snap it off. But all these smaller ones, there's no way. In something that matters, I'm sticking this easy out down in a bolt. I've got some tap handles in here, but no taps. That's the same thing, something like taps and dies, easy outs. I'm not going to go cheap on those products. If I'm going to buy them, I'm going to buy a high quality tool. All right, now we're going to talk about hex keys. And out of any of these tools, the things I have the strongest opinions on are the sockets and ratchets, and I have a lot to say there. After that, it's hex keys. And you might think that that's kind of a weird thing to have a major opinion on, but in manufacturing, everything used hex keys. And of course, we called them Allen wrenches, but I'm trying to be proper here so I don't get as much criticism for it. Hex keys are something that is very easy to round off if the item you're taking loose is tight. So I would not buy the cheapest hex keys I can find. Now the ones I have here are Pittsburgh, metric and standard. And then I've got some junk ones, I would assume, that came in different little tool sets. And I wouldn't use those on anything that mattered. Anything like what we had in manufacturing. We carried our hex keys with us all the time. I went through phases where I had the whole set with me, and sometimes I would just have 3 sizes that were in my pocket at all times because we were using them 100 times a day. And I knew like a 1/4-20 bolt was a 3/16 in an Allen head, but it was a 5/32 in a countersunk bolt. And that was just what I did. And we had rounded out hex key screws, bolts all the time. And what I learned was a couple things. First, ball drivers. Ball drivers are great because they allow you to get it at a different angle if you need to. They can really come in handy. But you want to be careful about putting high torque on a ball driver because it doesn't seat down into the socket near as well. So we often would find ourselves needing a cheater on a hex key. And a lot of times, it was very common for me to have an operator that was working under me. My job title was machine specialist, and we had operators that worked on the machines, and I kind of handled more the setup and repair. And they would come and they would say, this bolt's stripped out, it's rounded out. What we would do is take the smallest hex key, clean the crud out of the bottom of the hole, and then put the hex keys away. And we're not going after an extractor, we're getting an Allen socket at that point. The socket has a long amount of room before the bend. They're usually higher quality and don't round off as bad. And you can take this after you've cleaned the hole out, drive it down in there, pops right loose. And that's from the point when they told you it was stripped out. So don't use cheap hex keys on something that matters. And if you need a lot of torque, don't use a ball driver. Those are great for running it down. Don't tighten with them. Last thing on hex keys. I've got a bunch of these. I've bought a bunch of these. I hate them. I'm done with them. It's a low quality hex key. And whenever I say that, I used to buy hex key sets at Walmart. And they had free replacement. And so I would take them over there and replace them sometimes. But they also would provide them to us if you walked down into the parts room and said, I need a 3/16 hex key. They would give you one, and the ones they gave you would last 3 times as long as the ones out of the sets from Walmart. So there's definitely a difference. These sets come with a low quality hex key. I think it's just softer metal, and it's in plastic. Why would you use anything in a plastic holder that requires torque? These are fine for small sizes that are in low torque situations. All right, so measuring tools, levels, things like that. Even like a pair of calipers. I've personally never been in a situation where an inexpensive tape measure was a problem. Tape measure is a tape measure. They all work. I mean, if you buy the super cheap, it's a problem, but you don't need some fancy tape measure, to be honest. And that's the way I feel with most of these things. If you're in a situation where you have to be that precise, you're going to probably be using calipers, right? I have seen the videos where someone's holding 2 tape measures next to each other and they're like 1/8 of an inch off. I've tried finding that with my own tape measures. I can't find it anywhere. I think I might title this video something to do with saving money on tools or cheap brands versus expensive brands, and I've hardly named any brands so far. And that's because I don't have that strong of an opinion on most of these things. Some things you can get away with being cheap on and some you can't. Like, I don't think you need to spend a bunch of money on screwdrivers. Just get one that can hold multiple tools. Now, vice grips are something where I think the brand matters. Cheap vice grips are worthless. I've had pliers and vice grips that, even like channel locks, where they wanted to slip. And no matter how much you tried to tighten up the bolt here, I don't even see where this one can be tightened. These are cobalt. But with vice grips and pliers, I would not buy cheap pliers again. I bet in my life I've bought 30 pairs of pliers between needle nose and different things and just cheap pliers. And you're not saving money buying cheap tools for gripping because they just won't grip right. A big one for me is, along with hex keys, you had at least one, if not two sets of wire cutters with you at all times. And you take a cheap set of wire cutters that looks like this, and you try to cut with them, you're more likely to break the tool than cut real thick wire. And you can tell that the company that made these didn't even think about the design, because it's wide. If you open the jaws, you're wide already. I've got this back here, and to even get the jaws open, I'm out in my fingertips. They didn't even think about the design. Right? These are, I believe, the exact kind that we used. Actually, the ones we had were a little bit longer. But the handle comes in down here, so that when you've got them open, you've already got it in a squeezing position. You want a long handle on a set of wire cutters. You definitely want to get quality channel locks. I'm unsure on these because I haven't had them as long. Normally you've got the grooved style where you slide it open and you slide it up and down to get your set distance. And I'm pretty bad. The last few years I've been bad about having all my tools disorganized and ruining tools by leaving them out and getting them rusted. So you can see some of these tools wouldn't even open and close. I put Rust Patrol on them and they're doing a lot better. But I actually just went and got 2 new sets of channel locks because the ones I had sucked. I got one set with that style mouth on it and then a straight jaw set. And I'm a little bit undecided about this leverage system because instead of the sets of jaws, you got a push button and you can slide this. And I'm just wondering about the durability on these. So if you've used these for more than a year or two and they still work good, I'm trying to look at how the mechanism works. These are definitely going to be convenient to operate. I think I'm going to skip a couple of these drawers. I don't have a lot to say about drill bits and hole saws. You can buy cheap drill bits for certain types of things. In other instances, you need a more higher quality product. Something I wasn't familiar with, but I'm learning has a lot of uses, is a step drill bit. A couple of right angle attachments and a good mix of drill bits, you're in good shape. As I open my wrench drawer, I'm going to say the word snap-on for the first time. In my research for this video, besides talking to my dad and some other friends about their opinions on some of these tools, I also watched some tool review videos about Harbor Freight and about Snap-on. And there was a guy talking about it, and he's like, well, this wrench here, and it was a big wrench, like 1.5 inch wrench or something, like, and he was like, this is like a $400 wrench. I'm like, you're high. Just, I don't know what else to say. Unless you're in some kind of highly specialized field, you do not need an expensive set of wrenches. As I talked to my dad about this, he said, like in the 70s, before I was born, you used to have high quality tools, cheap junk tools. Now, in categories like a wrench, the cheap manufacturers make a high quality wrench that is good enough. How many times in the last 5 years have you had a wrench that just like broke or rounded out or widened out the jaw and it just wasn't good anymore? Now, you want to look and make sure you're not getting a short-handled wrench unless you're intentionally buying stubby wrenches. But there's no reason to care what the name brand of your wrenches are. go to Harbor Freight and buy a wrench set. But here's where I've run into so many problems, is buying a wrench set that covers 2/3 of the sizes that you need. Might have a couple of skips in there and doesn't go big enough. Well, you didn't buy anything, because sometimes it's going to be missing a wrench that you need. And going and buying 2 or 3 individual wrenches cost as much as an entire wrench set. If you've ever bought wrenches individually, you know what I'm talking about. I remember having a Craftsman wrench set, and I only bought Craftsman at the time, and I lost the 3/4, and I went to get a replacement, and I could get an entire wrench set at Walmart from Stanley, who's probably made by the same company at the time, for the price of, or close to the price of, one replacement wrench. So get a wrench set that, the first wrench set that you get for your toolbox should be one that doesn't have any skips in it and goes up to at least 15/16. I'd say that's a minimum. And then get that in standard and metric. And then take care of your tools. And one thing I've learned through trial and error, and by wasting a lot of money on tools, is that if you don't have a place for everything and put everything in its place, you'll never have a full tool set. And there are 2 kinds of guys. There are guys who just have tools laying everywhere, and there are guys who are meticulous about keeping their tools in good shape. And those guys save a fortune on not buying replacements. I've been both guys. For 13 years, I kept my toolbox exactly, perfectly organized at all times. And I always had the tools that I needed when I needed them, never looking for a tool. And then, as a homeowner, I just had a mess and realized the amount of time I spend looking for tools is insane. Right now, I'm missing 2 sizes out of this set. I don't have a 20 or a 22 millimeter. But a lot of wrench sets skip the 18. Don't buy a wrench set that skips the 18 millimeter. And a lot of people seem to hate adjustable wrenches. I love them. Great for hammers and for whatever you skipped in your wrench set. I especially like this guy. I don't know what his specialty purpose was, but I found this at a flea market for like 10 bucks. It's all beat up. The Keystone Manufacturing Company, and then it says Westcott right here. I think this is a pretty cool crescent wrench. Really thick and heavy duty. Let's talk about hammers real quick. And actually, before we talk about hammers, this is my favorite thing in the hammer drawer. And I used to have a bunch of them. You can see how mushroomed out that is. It's taken a lot of use. And the sides of it, I mean, it's gouged everywhere. A piece of aluminum that fits tight in your hand is a great tool to have with you. And I used to have a drawer that was mainly just things to use to drive with. That's different diameters of shafts. Sometimes we use those, like a small short shaft in a press or different things. But this is a great way to put a lot of force on something without tearing it up. You also need, rubber mallets, dead blow hammers, nice little sledge. I think that's like a 3-pound. And then, of course, I've got the big sledges that won't fit in here. Then, these hammers, which are crap. This is a junk tool. This is what you buy your wife, not to be sexist. You buy your wife or your boyfriend to hang up a picture in the house. Works perfect for that. Does not belong in my toolbox because they make actual good hammers. Your hammer should not be plastic. And really, a good hammer shouldn't have a wooden handle anymore either. These are fine for small projects. Somewhere, and I haven't found it yet, I've got all of these totes that I have not been through yet. These are all tools and supplies that I used when redoing a rental house. And I have not went through and looked in all that, but somewhere I've got 2 long-handled S-Twing framing hammers. And those are a high-quality hammer, and they're still not that expensive. And Harbor Freight sells a hammer that is a copy of that design. Steel all the way through, nice ergonomic grip to it, nail holder on the end. This doesn't even have the right shape. This is a toy hammer is what I would call it. So now we're talking about sockets and ratchets. And I'll tell you one thing, that over time I've learned to hate the most popular thing that people buy. And that is all-in-one tool sets or complete socket sets. I think they're a huge waste of money. It's okay to have one. This is a useless tool set, really. This is fine to, once again, put in your wife's car, whatever the case may be. You're not doing any kind of work with this. The wrenches are below standard. It's not worth anything. And here's another socket set. I've got this socket set right here in the Versa stack. And then I've got this socket set. And all of these put together is no more than just having one of them. Because they all have the same thing. And if you look at all of these socket sets and add them up, you won't find deep well sockets bigger than 9/16. This one has deep well in the SAE, but not in the metric. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's a small set that doesn't have that many tools in it, but it has repeats. This is a 1/2 inch right here. This is a 1/2 inch. You're limited with space. You're not giving me enough tools. Do we need 2 1/2 inch sockets so that we can have it in 3/8 drive and 1/2 inch drive? Do we need 3 wrench sizes for a 1/2 a socket set? To me, it's okay to have one of these in your vehicle, and if you're going out to do something that you know you don't need a lot of tools, say I'm just going to take this little set. But beyond this, I wouldn't buy a set like this ever again. And I'll tell you the strategy that I used when I was working in manufacturing is I found a set that was standard only and went up to the largest size I would need. And it was hard to find those. If you go into any store that sells tools, they'll have 10 different sets. Sometimes they'll cram like a hammer and some wrenches into a box this size. I don't know what the point of that is, but almost all the sets are multiple sizes, standard and metric in the same set. What I did was search out sets that are standard only, 3/8 drive only. And I had a full set of 3/8 drive sockets with no skips in it, without randomly having certain deep wells but not others. Get a real set of 3/8 drive sockets. But the brand doesn't matter. In this day and age, the cheap brands are good quality tools. And my dad, when we talked about this, he said there was a time when you could buy the cheap sockets and break them. I don't think this 3/8 drive socket, it's a 7/16. I don't think doing anything that's within reason is going to cause this to break or round off or get loose where it rounds off your bolts. I can't imagine a reason to spend more on a socket set. But I also can't imagine a reason to buy a bunch of socket sets that are repeats of each other without having all the tools. So what I see every time I open one of these sets, it just makes me mad because I realize it doesn't have what it needs. It's got one socket of one extension for the 1/4 inch and the 3/8, but no extension for the 1/2 inch. Why even include the 1/2 inch when there are only 5 sockets in this whole thing that use it? And the biggest is a 7/8. So there's nothing wrong with this socket set. It's closer than the little multi-tool sets, but I wouldn't buy it again. So I would either search out the sets, if you can still find them, like I'm talking about, that are a full set of a certain type of socket, and get one for each size. Or just get you a nice mid-grade ratchet and then buy a complete socket set and put it on to a clip-on tray that's going to be solid. Now these I kind of like. They've got a spot to hang them, even though I would not hang these up. I'm going to put them in a drawer. But I've got one issue, that my socket drawer that I want to use for standard and metric will only fit one of these. These are about an inch longer than my drawer. But these were inexpensive at Harbor Freight. And probably what I'm going to do is just cut the rivets off of these so that I can fit them all in here. I did find something really cool at Home Depot. And when I say Snap-on tools aren't worth it, I believe that. And I believe this Milwaukee set still wasn't worth the money. But they had a socket set for $99 that was not the full range of sizes. But they put real thought into it. They were anti-roll, wrench-compatible sockets. So that they had a square bottom and a round top. It's kind of handy, like a tight reach socket that won't roll off on you. But it still wasn't a full set. So even though that was a cool design feature, I'm not buying that. So I showed you in my other drawers that we had Torx bits. There are Torx bits in 2 different drawers up there. But I don't like using those. I like custom built or purpose built sockets that have the full range of sizes. You're not putting this on a screwdriver bit. So why buy a set that only goes halfway? And then this is the one that we used on the Jeep the other day. So if you buy this small set that goes to here, then you need this one for your Jeep. This one's going to cost as much as almost buying a whole set. So when you buy a set of Torx bits, buy the whole set. You buy a set of Allens. Most sets go to here, which is, I believe, the 3/8. Most sets stop at a 3/8. If you think you'll ever need one bigger, get the full set the first time. Then on both bars, one standard and one metric, I've got adapters that go up and down from every size, 3/8 to half. And then I've got your U-joint sockets or your swivel sockets and a short extension here. And of course I've got the longer extensions. These are the wobble extensions so that they give you a little bit of flex, but also if you push it in tighter, they lock in. And all of this is cheap Harbor Freight stuff. And you've got purpose-built tools, like a socket driver T-handle, that's homemade. This L-wrench for getting into the S-wrench, whatever you would call it. It's the exact right dimensions for tightening the wheel bolts on my tractor. And then this is something really fun that I found at Harbor Freight, and that is, it's actually hilarious, that the old joke is that every socket set is missing the 10mm, that everyone loses the 10mm. So this entire set is all 10mm. You've got 1/2-inch drive 3/8 and 1/4-inch drive with a swivel and a deep well and an impact, and basically every 10mm configuration you can think of. And it's like a novelty thing. And I saw it and I thought it was funny. I'm like, I'm not going to buy that. I'm just going to try to keep track of my 10mm sockets. But it's clever and it's funny and it's America that someone made this. And so I still wasn't going to buy it. But whenever I went and bought these tool holders and these tools right here and a couple other things, they said if you spend more than $50, you can pick a tool off this little cart for free. I got this for free. I'll put it onto my tool tray here. So these will be filled with a complete set of deep wells in each size. What I always used before was I had a whole bunch of these. This is all you need. You don't need this big board. And then you can line those up with your different sizes. Most of your even reasonably priced socket sets come in a plastic tray. It's really a pain to use. As I look at these tools right here, I have not made up my mind on these yet. I'd like to hear what you think about them. But as we look at the wrench drawer, this is where I said I need a bigger toolbox. That the drawers in this will hold all of your standard wrenches in standard and metric, just a normal wrench, and some crescent wrenches. But you can't put in all the wrenches I'd like to have. I like ratcheting wrenches or offset or some flex wrenches where the head pivots, things like that. I don't have room in here for that, even though I've got some of those over there. But I'm questioning these as I talk about those multi-tool sets as being something you can have in your car for emergency use. If maybe this isn't a great solution for that. if I'm going out to do a job, I'd rather take an actual wrench set, but this has the standard and the metric. Each one has 8 sizes, and this was a $10 tool. As long as you don't put it in a high leverage situation where maybe it won't hold up, you're going to be fine. Harbor Freight has a fantastic selection of impact sockets. I need to get some bars to put these on because I hate clicking them on and off of this plastic, and the plastic breaks. So I need to put these onto socket bars, but these are the deep wells in 1/2 inch and SAE. This goes to 1.25 inch. Now, this is a plastic socket set from Harbor Freight. It looks kind of like that other one, but this one I'm happy with. This serves a specific purpose. This socket set goes to 1.25 inch. This one starts at 1.25 inch. And it goes up to 1.5 inch. These are 3/4 inch drive, which I run the 3/4 inch drive with an adapter off of a breakover bar. Same thing with the metric. I've also got this set of non-deep well metrics that goes down smaller because I already had it. But we cover the full range of sizes here in impacts. The only thing I don't have much of in impacts, or I couldn't find, is extensions. I need to get some extensions for the impacts. But here's a thought I was having. If you say, I need impact sockets, then should you buy any 1/2 inch drive non-impact sockets? For tight spaces, your outer wall is slightly thinner in a non-impact than in an impact socket. But for 99% of cases, if you're investing money in these, do you need to invest separate money in a non-impact 1/2 inch drive socket set? When you're buying the big conglomeration set, then you're going to end up with it. But I think the answer is no. Here's another one on sockets. What do you guys think about 6-point versus 12-point? These are 12-point, and I didn't realize it. I would have chosen 6-point. So the takeaway here is pay attention to what you're getting. These 6-point sockets will fit the bolt better than the 12-point. They've got more contact area. The nice thing about the 12-point is when you run into square head bolts, you can actually put a larger size 12-point onto a square head. And here's a bunch of tools that won't fit. Got a paddle mixer, a couple of sets of bolt cutters, your breakover bars, things like that. Man, do I need a bigger toolbox. But I was shocked looking at the toolboxes at Harbor Freight. They have an Icon toolbox that seems really nice. It looks like a big Snap-on toolbox. And I knew everyone made jokes about how expensive those Snap-on boxes were, but I could not believe the reality. They posted there that toolbox, they were celebrating, it was only $3,000. Like, wow, that's a lot of money. And then it had to compare to the Snap-on version was $16,000. I cannot imagine. I don't care if you're getting paid $100 an hour to work on high-end sports cars or something as a professional mechanic. I can't imagine a scenario where you want a $16,000 toolbox. I just can't. I mean, if you think that's worth it, tell me why. I'm not going to be mad or disagree with you. I'd just like to hear the answer. I almost forgot to mention the torque wrench. For a long time, I would have been that guy who said you don't really need a torque wrench. I think you need a torque wrench. There are a lot of things where you can get by with just a couple ugga-duggas, but there are certain scenarios where you need that torque wrench. I've got a mid-grade one from Craftsman. Snap-on video I was watching, he said that these were like $700 torque wrenches that he had from Snap-on. Not a chance in the world that I would ever spend that. I could win the lottery tomorrow and I would not buy a $700 torque wrench. These are not impact sockets, but my set does go to 1 3/8, and I don't think there's a lot of impacts out there that are running 1 3/8. But some of my tool sets were not intentionally picked, but these were. Smallest socket here, 1 5/8. The biggest in my other set, 1 1/2 inch. Then we've got our adapters for 3/8, 1/2 inch to 3/4, up to 1 inch. And then here's the other one. We've actually got every adapter you can have here in an impact version. So we could take from 1 inch to a 1/4 inch and back on our drive set. And then we've got our 1 inch drive. This set is an example where you could say I didn't really need it because I don't go around using this all the time. I've actually only used a socket out of this twice. But on the day I needed one, I needed a socket that was like 2 inches or more than 2 inches, and I can't remember what it was for. And I looked, and I could get this set that has all of these adapters, the giant breakover bar in this entire set, for 2 to 3 times the price of that one socket. Thought, what if I need the second one next year? Man, get the set that has everything you need. I was planning to make my normal 10 to 12 minute video, and I have a feeling this is going to be a really long video. So I was planning to go into a lot of other things, but I didn't realize I had so much to say. And I probably didn't say a darn thing, to be honest. But, power tools. Personally, I feel like the batteries are more expensive than the tools sometimes. So in your battery power tools, with the cost of the batteries, I think you need to pick a system and stick with it. For me, the two best, and there's a lot of good ones. Rigid and Makita are apparently pretty good, but I haven't owned any of them. But to me, the premium brands in a homeowner line of power tool are DeWalt and Milwaukee. Say pick one of those and stick with it. If I had to say which was the best, I would probably say Milwaukee makes the best tools. But one thing I like about DeWalt is they've already bridged the gap to the next generation, where we used to have 18-volt power tools, and then everyone went to 20, and then it's 24. And each time it changes, your old tools aren't good anymore. Milwaukee has the M12 and the M18. DeWalt has the Flex Volt that will work in 20 volt and 60 volt. And I think that's a very smart choice. But I think with that, I don't like the cheap tools unless you're just not using them very much. I say go with a quality brand, and I'm a DeWalt guy without any kind of allegiance or sponsorship. So I don't know if I made any good points or made any sense in this video, but I'm trying to build up a nice tool set so that I've always got the tool I need when I need it. And I'm looking at how can I do that without spending a fortune or without always missing something. So as I'm going through it myself, I thought I'd share my thoughts with you, see what kind of feedback you guys have. I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.